Good morning, everybody, and happy Christmas. For those of you that are very, very observant, you'll notice you've got three overly excitable people to talk to you about peak season trading today. We couldn't resist getting the Christmas jumpers out. And for those of you that are parents and have got kids at home, you'll understand why when I walked through the house this morning, my kids looked at me like I was some kind of lunatic, trying to work out why the hell I was wearing a Christmas jumper. So thank you to those of you that have joined us this morning. We've still got a few people dropping in the background, which is great to see. I will kick off this morning. Hopefully my internet will hold up. It just seems like it's dropped out already, despite the kids having a warning to keep off the Xbox until I'm done. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Today, as you may have guessed, is a webinar all about planning for retail readiness and advertising success across peak season. I'm joined today by Becca, who is one of our account directors, or actually, sorry, was one of our account directors, is now head of services. Sorry, Becca, I can tell how new that is.
It's so new.
Very new. And we've also got Browett, who is one of our paid advertising managers. Before I talk any further, can I hand over to you guys just to say hello and introduce yourselves? Maybe Becca, your top left. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, morning everyone. Hi, I'm Becca. I'm head of seller services. Thank you, Andy. At Venture Forge. I've worked in the Amazon ecosystem for over 9 years now. Really broad kind of knowledge, and I'm a seller specialist with some quite different views to most people on Amazon. Jake?
Hi, yeah. So I'm one of the paid advertising managers at Venture Forge, or award-winning advertising manager, as I'm told to introduce myself as. I've been working on Amazon for around about 7 years, so not as seasoned as Becca, but my job is essentially just to manage all things paid for clients, all the way from strategy, implementation, and optimization.
Fantastic, thank you, Jake. And almost every year with Venture Forge, you win the best Christmas jumper competition. I don't think we can quite see it, but you've got a real live animated fireplace on the front of your top somewhere there.
There it goes.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we need to up our game, Becca.
I'm okay.
We were talking earlier, I think Halloween's your preferred season, so you've done well to drag the Christmas jumper out today.
It is.
I probably should have dragged mine out of the wardrobe more than half an hour before this call. I think when you pull something out and it's been sat there for the best part of 7 months, it probably could have done with going through the washing machine first.
Bit musty.
a little bit. Well, look, without further ado, we're here today to talk about peak season and how you get retail ready and how you drive advertising success across peak. Before we jump into our usual kind of Q&A format webinar, we've got a quick poll that I'd like to pop on the screen. Keen to hear from those that are on the webinar this morning, what aspect of preparing for peak season do you find most challenging? And if we can do, we'll try and shape the call a little bit around this as we go through. So I'll let that kind of stay up there for a few minutes and see what kind of answers we get through. Be interesting to see how this comes in. We often get some quite unpredictable answers on this one. Yeah, logistics and fulfillment doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Jake, good news, possibly maybe bad news. I suspect we've got some interest in advertising and marketing, so maybe some questions coming in your direction. Everybody's cool with listing and content optimization. Becca, so no need to...
I'll log off.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining. Excellent. Well, great to see where people's challenges are coming from. I did expect the whole logistics and fulfillment piece to be quite high up the list, so hopefully we'll cover some bits off on that in the Q&A today. Before I jump into questions I'd like to ask you, Becca and Jake, quick reminder to everybody that's on the webinar this morning. Bottom right-hand side of the screen, you should see a little questions icon. Please get your questions coming in. We have a few pre-sent in questions from attendees and a couple of people that couldn't attend this morning. Somebody from our team will be dropping those in the background as we go, but please get the questions in. We're going to do 45 minutes on questions that I've got for you, Becca and Jake, and we're going to open the floor to all the questions that are coming in along the way. So please do get those going. I guess without further ado, maybe start with you, Becca. We're sat here in Christmas jumpers. For most people, peak season means Christmas, but real simple question. What is peak season? When does it start? What does it look like? What the hell are we talking about today?
So, obviously, just think about, I think there's two ways to look at this. If you look at Amazon's peak season, think about it as a traditional retailer. Q4 is what we call, across the Amazon ecosystem, peak season. That is October through to December, trailing into January for January sales, but essentially those dates around sort of your Black Friday and your Christmas trading from an Amazon standpoint. What is key for us to talk about, though, is that people will have their own peak seasons. So things we've talked about earlier today, cycling will pick up earlier in the year rather than the back end of the year. So it's about making sure that you're aware of your own peak season and not just Amazon's. We've obviously got, I'm going to keep calling it Prime Day 2 because I can't get on board with Amazon changing its name every year. But we've obviously got Prime Day 2 coming up in October. We then go into Black Friday. We then go into what we like to call Christmas gifting or gifting season. And then we'll go into January sales. So Q4/Q1 is where we really see the peak of sales coming through.
Thanks, Becca. I think also some of those other nuances that we see around that, and also a bit more detail from my thoughts on this. Your peak on Amazon, we talk about October building, November flying, December flying until about week 3 into week 4, and then it falls off a cliff. So peak season is really going to start happening. What are we, a month and a week away from the beginning of peak season for most brands? You're absolutely right with that Prime Day 2, whatever you want to call it in October. That's that early kicker. And also some nuances I see in it. When I worked in retail, peak was over 4 or 5 days before Christmas, but Amazon's peak, because of Prime, pretty much, Amazon's Christmas peak, for clarity, was pretty much up to the wire. As long as you can get a Prime delivery, Amazon is still selling very well. And then I often see that kind of Christmas Day dip because people try and do the family stuff and they get off the internet a little bit. Boxing Day sales almost certainly kick in, bang on Boxing Day morning, or sometimes back into Christmas Day. So I think peak is standard Amazon, but it really does start to build now, hence today's conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, from our point of view, we're already talking to clients about making sure we've got stock in for Black Friday and for Prime Day 2. Deal submissions are closing, I think, in 2 weeks for October Prime Day deal. So, Amazon are already talking about this stuff early. And I think it's just making sure that you're on top of it as quickly as you can. August, we joke about it. We did a webinar a month ago and we were already saying we're talking about Black Friday already. So we've been sort of, in the Amazon world, you're already talking about it mid-year. So where traditional retailers are already thinking about next Christmas, Amazon's sort of 6 months, that 6 month mark. I think what's really interesting though is how the landscape has changed slightly with that secondary Prime Day coming in. We used to historically see that Black Friday was our strongest trading day of the year. It was sensational. Because they've dropped in that secondary Prime Day, we're actually seeing that Cyber Monday is a much stronger day for us. So it's quite interesting to see how Amazon are actually manipulating the traditional retail patterns by bringing these dates closer in. And I think brands need to have a sort of understanding of which one do you participate in. If you participate in both, are you aware that you're probably going to drop off on one of them? If you participate in October, is it going to have a stronger performance as you would if you were doing Black Friday? And just have a think about what you need to participate in across the board.
So it's probably fair to say then, Becca, that peak on Amazon is definitely that October, November, December build. It builds and builds. Yeah. But in reality, it's a series of almost mini events with that build to Christmas running alongside it. You've got to think about the impact of Prime Day 2, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or Cyber Week, as you call it, and then that real flurry of activity that builds into the final week 2, week 3 of December. So it's not just a season, it's a season of mini events, each of which needs their own strategy and thinking behind it, but ultimately building towards the big day in December.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, last year, Black Friday or Cyber Week was 2 weeks for Amazon. So you were already looking at a 14-day period, which has gone from being a 4-day period. So they're just trying to get as much activity to the site as possible. We had an amazing Prime Day across our clients, which was brilliant to see. I think October will be slightly softer and then we'll go back into the usual trading day, mainly because quite a lot of the SAMs in our team are saying don't participate in October Prime Day. But I think it'd be really interesting to see what kind of hype Amazon put behind it, because for the past 2 years, they've not really gone after it as much as they did when we were in COVID. So I think it'd be interesting to see how much activity they put behind October.
Fantastic. Thank you, Becca. So we've kind of clarified what's peak season, and for different people, that will mean different things, but hopefully that's given some context. I suppose the next part of today's title is retail readiness. Before Jake, you've got the easy gig here, mate. You can be quiet for the first 5 or 10 minutes. But what is retail readiness, Becca? What we're talking about when we say being retail ready for Amazon?
It's what I would call your Amazon fundamentals. So ensuring that your listings and you're in a really strong position to start trading. Amazon's definition of retail readiness is having a strong title, bullet point, at least 5 bullet points, using your 7 image slots with a combination of images and video, 15 reviews over 3.5 stars. So making sure that your listings are in a position where your consumer can essentially shop with ease. But it goes a little bit broader than that, I think. So it's looking at your stock, making sure that you're not going to go out of stock. I understand that unprecedented stock losses can happen. So we can have some people that have an amazing Black Friday and then they've not got stock in play. I know that one of our senior account managers, Ananda, when she was at her other business last year, that's essentially what happened to them. They had an amazing Black Friday, totally unprecedented. But it's things about like looking at how much stock you've got, being prepared that if you have a good October, what happens in November, but also taking into consideration that Amazon doesn't, as much as they don't advertise this, Amazon stop accepting stock. So there'll be a 2-week window around Black Friday where they reduce the amount of stock that's inbound. So making sure that you're being forward forecasting, making sure that you're in a position where if you do run out of stock come Black Friday, you've got stock landing the following week as much as you can. We generally try to get our clients to move to almost a 1 a month shipment. That's kind of your ideal, so you're cutting down on your fulfillment fees. When it comes to Q4, you can't do that because it's so it fluctuates so much. You have to be in a position where you're moving stock around fairly often. You go into weekly shipments or bi-weekly shipments. And as much as all the other stuff, the SEO, all of that is super important and your reviews are super important, the stock is fundamentally what will determine your success for Q4 or for peak season.
So in a simple summary, I get the Amazon definition of that's really quite narrow, I think. But I think from our point of view, we're saying it's having all your ducks in a row. It's getting everything ready so that when that peak season comes, you can trade and you can trade well. Content listings, reviews are a fundamental part of that. But I guess what you're really saying, Becca, is there's also an expectation now that brands have that ready for the majority of the season. The real lever of retail readiness coming into that peak season is that stock and that inbound management and making sure you're available when the customer wants the product.
Yeah, and I think looking at the data from the previous years, understanding whether or not you had what was the category doing around you. So if this isn't something that you look at on a regular basis, is what's happening around you, I'd implore that this year you start to look at what did your competitors do. Make a note of that. So when you come to look at it next year, you've got a wider awareness of more than what you did. I think sometimes brands can be quite narrow in, well, we did X and we did a really good session over Black Friday. Brilliant. But if everyone else did 50% off and you did 30%, how much of the pie did you miss out on because you weren't competing with the category? So look much broader, look at what happened over Prime Day. Don't necessarily mirror as well what happened over Prime Day. Try different things. I will still sit here and bang the drum that you do not need to advertise. Sorry, Jake, you do need to advertise. You do not need to discount over Black Friday to succeed. It does help, but we're getting to a point where Amazon consumers are expecting big discounts. Amazon consumers are expecting you to go really heavy, when in reality what we're seeing is quite a lot of sellers putting prices up to drop them back down to where they are. So you might as well just maintain at the RRP you're at.
Fantastic. Becca, I'm going to give you a break. I'll let you catch your breath on your morning coffee. Next question I want to move on to is what are the key steps that a brand should take to prepare for that October through to January peak? And what are some of the common pitfalls? I'd like to cover this from both an advertising and a non-advertising perspective. But maybe if we go with you first on that one, Jake, and let Becca come up for air. What are the key steps that a brand should be taking from an advertising point of view to prep for peak?
I think definitely from ads side, there's quite a few things you need to prep in advance and allow for enough time to get everything in place. So for a good sort of Q4 peak strategy, you probably want to be employing a lot of creative media, copy, some new storefront pages. And as we know with Amazon, it can take a long time to get these approved. So I would say leading into that period is definitely for your ad creatives, for any custom imagery or video, is allow plenty of time. So ideally start planning now how that sort of seasonal promotion calendar looks, making sure they're briefed in with plenty of time. And that allows enough time then to get those custom images back, get them pre-approved by Amazon if possible. You can submit them for moderation early so you know they're going to be accepted, and then sort of getting your ad set up ahead of time with a future start date, so you're not scrambling to get them created once peak is already hit, and then you get hit with rejections and you've got to go back to design teams and do things like this. So I think certainly from an ad perspective, those are the main things, is to get your creatives into your design team, get them pre-approved, and get your ads set up and ready for what you may need to do. As well as that, storefront advertising can be really effective around peak season if you've got a big catalog. So if you are building out a custom ads page that you're going to drive ads to, then is ensuring that's in place and approved ahead of time as well, so you can get your ads set up.
So it feels like, Jake, almost to the fact that we're talking about Christmas in August. Are we in August? I think we're in August. I'm losing track. You can tell I've been off the details this week. It's getting on the front foot and actually being prepared, not just expecting to go into peak and trade, but working out now what you need to do to be able to pull those levers and get your advertising campaigns firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, definitely being proactive rather than reactive when you start to see the increase in traffic. Being on the back foot when other competitors have already got their ads live. It's just about planning and making sure, you've got to allow whatever time you think you need to allow, always add a week or two on, because these things take time, and Amazon are notoriously sticklers for design and copy, things like that.
Yeah. You've got to bear in mind at this time of year, if you're working in a brand, you're not the only brand going through this process and trying to push change for Amazon. The workload at Amazon's side, I guess, hence, Becca, why things from a logistics point of view are restricted. They're as busy because we're all as busy. We're pushing change through them. So to your point, Jake, one, you've got a lot more you want to prep for. Two, Amazon will be busier. The approval windows are likely to be longer. Yeah. You probably need to be looking at that stuff now and in September to be ready to go for October through to November, December.
Definitely.
Becca, Jake talked a bit there about the importance of content and being ready from an ad side. What are your thoughts on things like seasonal content refreshers from a retail readiness point of view?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's actually something I've been talking about internally. If you've got product, or at least a concept maybe for us all to discuss, if you've got product that is a gifting product, something that I'm quite interested about the concept of is thinking about using your storefront and your April's content almost like a Christmas gift guide. We used to do them quite a lot in traditional retail. We used to do paper lookbooks and digital lookbooks. I quite like the idea of having a storefront built specifically for taking someone on a journey to buy a gift. Seasonal content's brilliant as long as you've got the resource to turn it back as quickly as possible. So as we come into January, you're going to have content changes going through. So think about one of the big things that I think people don't necessarily take into consideration is you're obviously closed for a time over Christmas. Stuff's not going to be happening. So if you've got a lot of Christmas content live in December, how is that transitioning over come the 1st of January? So I would be thinking about seasonal content in a way of how do your products then fit to gifting or fit to a Q4 or fit to winter? Definitely. I wouldn't necessarily go super heavy with Christmas, ho, 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 that kind of thing. We see it a lot with things around like back to school is brilliant, peaks, and then it drops out, and 3 months later you've still got people selling back to school, and it's like that's moved on. So I think Jake's point around being proactive rather than reactive is probably the key thing around all of peak trading, whether that is content, whether that is advertising, whether that is promotions, whether that is stock. You've got to be on the ball from now until we all have a rest on Christmas Day.
It's interesting. We've all used the word trading a lot. It's about peak trading, but one of the things I see completely underused at Amazon from a trading perspective is content. If we were talking today about we work at Brand X and we're running Brand X's website, there would be a clear content trading plan running alongside the promotional trading plan and the email trading plan. You would be refreshing that content. You would be launching gift guides. You'd be updating the homepage content on a weekly basis, potentially even more often than that. You'd be curating the visual merchandising. What's at the top of the product listing pages would be curated to put the right seasonal product to the top. And you don't often see that being done as well on Amazon, whether that's on the storefront, whether that's in the advertising creative, or whether it's in the product imagery. You don't see that level of trading going on, and I can't help but feel that's a real untapped opportunity from a retail readiness point of view that brands should be doing a lot more with.
I mean, I'm pretty sure our head of design is about to lose it with me when we come off this call, but like the idea of having an interactive storefront that you can click behind almost like it's you turning a page in like in the old Boots catalogues or the Boots, when they would have a full Christmas gift guide. That is quite exciting when you've got quite a big catalogue. I think part of this is because people generally just look at Amazon as a trading platform. It's a place to sell. It's not a place to build brands. And that mentality is happily starting to phase out now. We're starting to see a lot more brands join. I think it's quite a lot to do with the push of Amazon pushing a lot more into content. There's a lot more happening around video ads. As Jake's alluded to there, a lot more around TV ads. But I think the concept of being able to change the way that your product looks and feels, have more of an emotive feel rather than I'm just going to sell to you and I'm selling cold to you. Using your content to add a bit of warmth, buy this for mum kind of note is perfect for this kind of year, because that's what this season's all. I mean, look at us. We're sat here on the 29th of August in Christmas jumpers. We should all be throwing salt over our shoulders, but we're all sat here kind of giddy about the fact that Christmas isn't actually that far away. It's however many sleeps. And that's the kind of excitement that you need to start thinking about driving on Amazon.
I love the fact you're pretending you don't know how many sleeps it is.
I'll get back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we've talked about what maybe some of the things we should be doing to prepare for that peak season. What about pitfalls? Are there any things that we've seen brands do that shoot themselves in the foot? I guess, Jake, from your side, one thing that we always talk about, particularly over Prime days, is available budget for advertising. You know, is there anything else we should be thinking about as a pitfall? Where do brands often cock it up or make mistakes?
I think definitely on Amazon advertising, if you work with, some of the ads teams, some of the temptation can be during a deal event. If you've got tight margins anyway, there's a big effort from Amazon to get people to increase their bids and their budgets around Prime Day. So you'll see leading into Prime Day, if you're setting up campaigns, they actually changed it this year. So if you set up a campaign, if you don't change the setting, it defaults to suggested bid for Prime Day event, which are usually 20-30% higher than normal. And I think a big mistake can be just to assume that you have to spend more, you have to raise your bids during this period to be successful, when ultimately if you're running on tight margins, these are something that can, you can sell more units, but if you spend so much more on advertising to get there, you've probably eroded your margin and actually lost profit during the event as well. So unless it's for a specific reason that you want to drive sales velocity and be more competitive, don't feel the need just to massively ramp up budgets and, more importantly, your bids during the event, just because Amazon might say it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, sound. Thank you, Jake. Becca, any thoughts on pitfalls? What are the common things that you've seen go wrong?
Just lack of stock. That's probably, I've probably got all my Sams sat there saying absolutely yes. We're going into Q4 with some clients having key lines out of sale until January. So making sure you're on top of stock, making sure you've got stock ready for the end of the year. A lot of toys and games clients we see don't expect the demand that comes, expect it and prepare for it. But I think stock is the biggest one, where we generally find we end up being on the back foot. And it seems to have been a common thread of the whole year, is that people have struggled with stock this year in general. I think if you're going to do one thing to revolutionise your Amazon business, is to make sure you've got enough stock cover to get you through to January. You need to be looking at January stock for August.
Right, thanks, Becca. I think one thing you prompted me to think about, more from your point, Jake, about the bid adjustments, is brands not understanding what they're actually trying to achieve over this peak period. Are you going for growth, pure sales growth? Are you going for profit growth? Are you going for brand share growth? I'm seeing brands become more clear on that more than ever. I've certainly seen over the last 12 to 18 months a real focus on profitability, but that's not across every client we've got. Some clients are in a position of, I want brand share growth at the cost of profitability. Some want pure profitability at the cost of maybe market share growth. I think for me, it's brands not knowing what they're trying to achieve. So when you come into Prime Day 2, Cyber Week, Christmas peak, actually not knowing what you're trying to achieve can really hamstring you when you then try to work out, well, what should I do from an advertising point of view? Am I going to pay to play? Am I discounting heavily at Prime Day? If you're clear on what you're trying to achieve, I think you can answer the strategic questions around what should I be doing at Prime Day 2? What should I do at Cyber Week? What should I do at Christmas? If you can't answer that question clearly about what you're trying to achieve, you're possibly going to shoot yourself in the foot by not being clear on the objectives. So I think that's probably the biggest pitfall I see, not being clear on what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And I think a lack of awareness. If you've run and Jake, obviously feel free to counter this, but if you've run a brilliant ROAS over the year, and then you come to Black Friday and your ROAS just tanks, the whole category has got more aggressive, because that's what Amazon's telling them to do. It's telling them to up bids. It's telling them to go make a lot more, a lot more aggressive, spend more cash. When in reality, you might be better off, as Jake says, just tread water through Black Friday from an ads perspective, and just, as awful as it sounds, survive it, because you're probably going to do more damage to your brand by going hell for leather on ads just for Black Friday, because the amount of consumers that you're just buying competition against would probably come back to you in a couple of weeks anyway if they've not bought on Prime Day or Black Friday.
Yeah, I think that for me, that's why that strategy for the entire season is really important, particularly coupled with all the stock and inventory challenges you've talked about, Becca. Yeah. There's no point in going bust on Prime Day 2 and then killing your inventory for Cyber Week or for Christmas. for the sake of joining an event and feeling like you should be participating, because that's the message that Amazon is giving. Hold that stock, don't discount it. If you've got inventory challenges, you shouldn't be discounting at all.
100%. 100%. Amazon is brilliant at FOMO. You know, you haven't done a submission yet. Are you sure you don't want to do this? Come on, up your bids for this. They're just about beating FOMO as much as they can. And I think that over the past few years, a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon, tried to get more and more from Amazon, doing as much, joining every event. And then clients or new business ops are coming to us and saying, our margin's shot, what do we do? Well, stop participating in everything Amazon wants you to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you have to start playing Amazon at your own game and start protecting your own brand rather than being part of the fight.
Yeah, great point, Becca. I've got a question here that I was going to ask, but I'll skip past it because I feel like we've kind of done it. It was, how does inventory management impact retail readiness? I think we've talked a lot about the importance of it. I guess, how can brands then effectively manage stock levels? How do we get that line right between understocking, overstocking? How the hell do you solve that, Becca?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's all about data. So look at your past deal windows, look at your past peak trading and understand, you might have, I would try and take COVID out of it because that was such an unprecedented event. You can't set anything by that. Look at prior years to understand what was your uplift coming out of Q3 into Q4. If you're trending 20% up year on year, and then you know that going into Q4 you were up 40%, start to sort of stock forecast on that perspective to start with. But then it's got to go to regular reviews. You've got to start looking at your stock on a weekly basis and getting stock in. Personally, I would go for overstock than understock because it will sell. You might find yourself hit with a few more storage fees as you come into January, but it's better to be overstocked than understocked. One of the most dangerous things is to go out of stock the week after Black Friday and not being able to get any stock in because Amazon's still recovering. Effectively is a really difficult one because we've had clients that over this Prime Day, they had such an unprecedented amount of sales. We just had to get stock in the day after, and we were in a sort of 10, 14 day lead time because of Amazon. So it's just using as much data as you can, using as much insight as you can, really starting to understand what your trading pattern does and understanding how historically you've gone, but looking at category data as well. So what usually happens in the category. So we all know because we've worked, but obviously because it happens across the world. Toys and games will go absolutely crazy for Q4. But if a new film comes out the week before Black Friday, that's going to drive even more traffic to that brand. So you've just got to be aware of what's happening outside of Amazon as well as what's happening internally because it's just as important.
Fantastic. Almost makes our process redundant around this peak period. So we've got we're normally talking about reading historical sales levels, looking at whether you're looking at 90, 60, 30, or even 7 days history. But over this peak period, your hands are tied behind your back at certain points in terms of inbounding. So it's probably the only time of the year where I'd agree wholeheartedly with you, Becca, which is don't be agile, don't flex, don't respond quickly. It's overload the stock, get the stock there to sell. And I think for me, it's more about reactively trading that stock and not reactively replenishing that stock. It's better to have more there and then actually say, well, hang on now, I feel like I need to go a little bit harder on Black Friday because I'm carrying a bit too much, or I might have an opportunity to promote more into those final few weeks of December, or equally, maybe liquidate some of that in the January sale period, because that would be better than missing the sales opportunity because you haven't got the agility to respond with inbounding.
Yeah, 100%. You being out of stock gives your competition a free pass.
Yeah. So
if you've spent months trying to gain market share and then you go out of stock, everything you've just done is undone for 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks. So it is about almost undoing everything you do throughout the rest of the year.
Great shout. It's very easy to look at peak as a sales period, but you still have to think about your sales velocity and rankings coming out of that period and your business for the rest of the year. Great shout. So Jake, assuming Becca's done the job, listings are looking great, she's got all the stock sorted, nobody's gone out of stock, Amazon have played ball, none of their clients have participated in Prime Day because that's what she recommends. What advertising techniques are you then going to put in place that you find really effective over that peak period, and how do you optimize that spend for ROI over that entire window of, I guess, 2 to 3 months of peak trading?
Yeah, I think, whenever you look around, similar for deal events and peak periods, it's the classic tentpole strategy is something that always works quite well. And what that really boils down to is not just trying to exploit the traffic as and when it's on Amazon and you have that peak period, but it's having an element of preparation going into it and seeing how you can benefit from the traffic afterwards and those increased audience sizes. So leading into a deal event, it's going to be really important that all your ads are in a good place, your creatives are all set up, and you're starting to build momentum leading into that event. What you'll find is during a peak period, a lot of brands will put up their bids, budgets, and CPCs are a lot more expensive. So if you're already lagging behind in terms of rankings and where your ads are placed leading into that event, it's a lot more expensive to increase your rankings and get up and be competitive during the event. So if you can start that process early when bids are a little bit cheaper, increase your rankings, increase your ad share of voice, you're going to be a lot better during the deal event. When that peak season is running, obviously you want to be tracking certain metrics on Amazon, top of search impression share, your ad share of voice, just to make sure you've got good coverage over the period. And then obviously expect unprecedented budget spends as you've got traffic sometimes doubling or tripling if your products are super seasonal. So allow for, you've got budget rules in place, so you're never going to run out of budget. And then it's important then as well, once you've finished that peak season, is how you can look to benefit from that increased traffic. So at the end of the deal event, you can look at doing some remarketing or retargeting campaigns to target those increased audience sizes. As well as that, you could set up brand tailored promotions. So your audiences are dependent on the traffic you've had in the previous 30 or 90 days, and they'll be largest around sort of January. So those audiences are even bigger to retarget around then. So it's kind of leading into it, making sure you've got coverage during, and then exploiting those increased traffics afterwards as well. So that's the classic tentpole strategy. As well as that, I'd say if you want to stand out during peak season, as we've touched on earlier, it's really good to get custom creatives and custom media, something that's unique and stands out, something that's seasonal and maybe targets a certain type of shopper on that period, so different to what you've been running all year, and something that can stand out. As Becca's mentioned, video is massive with Amazon now. It's something where there's very limited placements, and if you're scrolling through a search results page, video is one of the things that stands out most. So that's something you can do to really stand out, above the competition.
Not just from an ads perspective as well, they're starting to have play buttons within search results, so you can actually see the listing videos through without even clicking through onto a listing. So video is becoming so key.
Fantastic, thank you. And Jake, something came to mind as you kind of talk about tentpole strategy. I think it's easy to think we're talking at a brand level here, but I think even within brands, you're going to have slightly nuanced ranges where the tentpole strategy almost works on a micro level. So I'm thinking here, if I was a cycling business, cycling products sell across the year. I think, Becca, you said at the beginning, the cycling peak may be more springtime, but there's different peaks in the cycling sector. So bike lights, the moment the clocks change go back and the nights turn darker, that's peak season for commuters to be buying bike lights, and Amazon is the go-to destination for those kind of products. So you almost got a mini event, a mini season within the brand, where I'm guessing, Jake, that tentpole strategy might still come to life, where that's coming, how you're going to build that audience before. There'll be a window or probably a month around that October or autumnal time period where the clocks change. And I guess what else are you going to sell those consumers if you've got other products in the range? Once that event has passed, you've got an audience there that you can now remarket to. The other thing that came to mind there was, I guess, sort of that gifting period where people are buying product for the first time, where it might be a cosmetic product. What can you do to that audience on a subscribe and save basis afterwards? Are you looking at this as a new customer acquisition window where the customer buys the product for the first time in that deal or that peak period, but then you want to get back into them for those replenishment purchases throughout the year? So I'm guessing that's where that tentpole strategy comes in a bit more, is build the audience before, but what else can you do with them afterwards?
Yeah, certainly looking at lifetime value if you're in that consumable space is going to be really useful. And one thing you mentioned there around gifting, and this is a big thing I see around sort of Christmas time, and probably more of a pitfall to avoid potentially than a strategy, is I see some brands they're very keen to go after Christmas gift for dad, for example, and around that time of year it's one of the most expensive keywords. There's really high volume, but there's going to be a very narrow field of products which are actually suitable and are going to get conversions for those keywords. And I see that, so if you want to go after gifting keywords, I would say don't go after the generic broad ones around, gifts a month, Christmas gifts. Is make them really category or product specific. If it's a fishing product or a golf product, make sure you've narrowed down and drilled down to that level.
I think that's I hate to say it, but probably a really, really obvious point that most people miss, because everybody wants to sell their product into that gifting period. We hear that time and time again, but you're right, it's probably the worst generic search term you can come up with. The volume is huge volume there, but if you think about gift for dad, that's pretty much any product with a semi-male bias on it. So the conversion rate and the chance of success on that, combined with the high CPCs that you attract, it's a fool's errand. So you're absolutely right, Jay. The volume on those more granular, longer tail terms will equally be going through the roof, whether it's fishing gift for dad, cycling gift for dad, cosmetics gift for mom, whatever it may be. The volume there also increases. Yes, the cost will increase, but the relevancy will be so much better for the brand.
Yeah.
Solid, thank you very much. So let me come on to the last question I've got for you guys. I'm guessing more of a summary question before we go on to the audience Q&As. I'll probably come to you first, Becca, because we just had Jake for the last question. What strategies can brands use to do to stand out in this what will be a really crowded market this peak season? What kind of key strategy would you be saying brands should be focusing on?
I would suggest trialing, if you're going to think about participating in deal events, trial different types of discount if you're going to go ahead with it, or try discounting the week before or the week after, pick up that traffic that's looking for or buying after. I would say seasonal content's a big one. I think, getting really a lot of custom imagery out there is great. We're seeing it with a battery client now. We're even trying to look at how we can do like sponsored brand campaigns that are based on Halloween, because that's what's coming and we're really excited about it. And obviously it sits in my pod, so we're talking about Halloween already.
You're really excited about it.
I'm pushing it through to the team. I think understanding who your customer is. So is your customer a convenience customer? Is your customer someone that is going to buy a product for gift? Look at how your product split looks on Amazon. So truly understand, what is that bestseller? What are they buying it for? Is that the product that, for example, is best on Subscribe and Save? If so, you're probably not going to see a lot of people coming to purchase that when you come into if they're in Subscribe and Save. So start understanding how the rest of your category the rest of your catalogue can help. Don't necessarily bring out products just for gifting. I think that can be quite a fundamental miss on some clients, is where we see people bring a product in for October, it takes till December to start ranking and then let it go. I understand things like diaries and calendars and things like that will always have that sort of short period to do that, but things like gift sets don't necessarily get enough time to start building up. But for me, it's all about truly understanding what you want, truly understanding what your competitors are doing, truly understand what your product is, and then going after what it is that you want rather than going with the FOMO.
Fantastic. Thanks, Becca. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, a crowded market in a PPC sort of landscape looks a little bit different. When things get crowded, things tend to get expensive. So I think that's where you've got to really be careful and be tracking what you're spending on a CPC level. So I think it's probably going to rehash some of the points we've mentioned earlier. If you want to stand out in that market, you can use. There's a lot more tools at advertisers' disposal now to get a bit more creative. So your custom imagery, you've got a short bit of copy you can use. You've got video adverts as well. So it's really about doing your best to look at the metrics that are important for these sort of ad types, is the click-through rate. So you can do lots of work with A/B testing now to trial different custom creatives, lifestyle imagery, different taglines for your ads, see how they stand out. And then I think it's understanding, at these peak periods, if it's really crowded, if the CPCs are just too expensive for your main keywords, rather than just lose money on every click that you're getting for these main keywords, is see how you can exploit these and benefit from another way. So if you've got a big competitor, big name brand that is dominating that space for your main keyword, which is 1 or 2 words, and they're getting most of that traffic, you can perhaps look then to see how much it costs to advertise on their product detail page instead, because those CPCs might be half of the main keyword, but you're still benefiting from all that traffic seeing your product and your listing as well. And then likewise, if your main keywords are, just prohibitively expensive, it's just looking at some of the longer tail keywords that still contain those keywords, but are less presence on Amazon for those ones.
I love your example there, Jake, of advertising on the big brand, because I think the question was probably loaded in the wrong way. How do you stand out? But success isn't about standing out. It's about competing, being smart. And I love that view of, you don't have to compete. You don't have to stand out to succeed. You can literally hang on to their coattails if that's where you are strategically. I think The only other thing I'd add to that, if I was thinking about how do I stand out in a crowd market, I always come back to where is there an opportunity and where is there a gap. And the thing that I still see not being exploited well on Amazon is that seasonal content or creative content. And you've touched on some of that, Jake, as have you, Becca. I think if I was a batteries brand, to give an example, why do you buy batteries at Christmas? It's because every single toy you buy doesn't come with them. So how can you tailor your ad creative and your content to tug on those heartstrings of don't forget the batteries this season? That could be a great piece of video content from a video advertising perspective. You've probably got the same opportunity if you're looking at, if you're a pens brand, why is a pen bought around peak? It's probably a stocking filler. How can you tailor the creative to push it down that route? So I think from a creative point of view, whether it's your ideas, Becca, from a storefront and a gifting guide from a brand, whether it's within video content, whether it's on the PDP, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that seasonal content refresh and tailoring content to the current seasonal opportunity, whether it's bike lights in October, whether it's pens, stocking fillers or batteries for toys. There's plenty of opportunity there to bring that content to life. So I feel like I've grilled you guys enough with my questions. I'm going to give myself an easy gig because I've now got lots of other people's questions to read out, but I'm afraid it puts you two both on the spotlight a little bit more. So if you've not got a question yet, we've got about 15 to 20 minutes to go. I'd like to wrap this up on time because I'm conscious people can block an hour in and have other things to go on. So I want to start first with Joe's question. Becca, I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm going to pop it up on the screen. We can all see Joe's question. I think this might be one for you, Becca. I've got my view, but we'll come to you first. Would you recommend participating in Prime Day 2 and Black Friday, or just one of the two events? Becca, I'll let you go first, and then maybe I'll give a more considered answer.
Do you know what? I'm going to be really political here. If you choose to participate in an Amazon event, personally, or an event on Amazon, I would personally choose Black Friday. And the reason for this is I don't believe that the reach of Prime Day goes further than the people who are generally on Amazon. So, and I mean that respectfully as possible. Black Friday is a global event. Everyone cares about Black Friday. Everyone participates in Black Friday. Prime Day, you're only obsessed about it if you are a brand on Amazon or you're waiting for an air fryer. So if it was me personally, I would participate in Black Friday, and I would look to minimise that as much as possible. So maybe just do Black Friday or just do Black Friday through to Cyber Monday. Don't necessarily participate in the long 14-day period that Amazon will put in front of you.
Thank you, Becca. I'd give a slightly different view on it, Joe. I do agree with what Becca said. There's some real sense in that. Becca's very, very passionate about the whole participate or not in deals topic. I'd start, Joe, with, well, what are you trying to achieve first and foremost? You know, as a brand, where are you in your journey? What does success look like? What are you trying to get out of this? And then you can put Prime Day 2, Black Friday, Cyber Week, and then the building to peak into a bit more context. And I'd also say, and I think this is something that, Becca, you say all the time, but maybe just with a slightly different view on it, is you can participate in Prime Day 2 or Black Friday and Black Friday without actually participating in the way that people think it means. So one of the messages Becca always drives, and we always drive to our clients, is think about whether you should or shouldn't discount, think about whether you should or shouldn't advertise. So your strategy for Prime Day 2 or Black Friday might be, don't shift my advertising strategy, maybe increase your ad budgets because you want to grab the available volume, but I'm not going to discount, I'm not going to do any kind of trading or promotion. That's still participating because the traffic on Amazon will go up on those events, your sales will go up on those events. Your way of participating might be, I'm not discounting because I want to protect margin and I just want to take the natural increasing volume that's coming down the tracks. Participation doesn't mean you have to discount by 20%. So I'll take a step back, look at what you're trying to achieve. Participation can mean do nothing. That's still a really valid way of participating. Lay down your own trade plan and see what success looks like. Jake, anything to add from your point of view? Or I guess is that more of a generic one? Any thoughts from an ads guy's perspective?
I think, you've covered the part around, ensuring you've got a strategy. I think one thing I'd add, and possibly a mistake brands make, is if they are trying to use a deal event as a ranking vehicle, if they want to get to page one, is what some brands don't realize is they can do a massive deep discount, but they run at a loss. We can increase ad spend a lot, and we can definitely get products to rank one. But at the end of that event, if you put your price back to normal, you pull back on ads activity, you're eventually going to drop right back down as well. So if you're going to use it as a ranking exercise, it's just ensure that once the deal event is finished and you're back at your normal RRP that you want to run at, that it still can maintain that competitive advantage, or it's still competitive on price or perceived value. It's a big one to keep an eye out for.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jake. We're going to go on to Hannah's question next. Hannah's asking, we launch a lot of new products at this time of year. Would you say we need 15 reviews before October to see success over Q4?
Yes.
Yes. So give us some more context, Becca.
I think I'm assuming this is a seasonal product, so something like you're selling diaries or you're selling calendars or something like that. Your competition will be doing everything that they can do to get those reviews in. But you need 15 reviews for ads to start really starting to kick in and really starting to perform properly. 15 is a good number. You know, you can use the Vine program, and now that's got different tiering, so you don't have to go to the full 30 WAP. I think what's really important is that come October, people are starting to shop. If you haven't got customer proof in there in your listings, your listings are going to fall down from a relevancy point of view, and the people that do have the reviews will start to climb. So I'm not saying steadfast 1st of October. If you don't have 15 reviews, your products are going to fail. But you know, you should be getting towards that point by the start of October, definitely.
I think to give some context as to why that's important, that kind of 15 reviews is an Amazon bit of guidance. And it's not just 15 reviews, it's 15 4-star plus reviews, because that's a real indicator of quality to the consumer. It's from my point of view, I'll let Jake take the out specific stuff, but for me, it's where advertising can start to work. If you're going to spend money to advertise a product with no reviews or 5 reviews and low quality ratings, the conversion rate or the click-through rate on that will be through the floor. The conversion rate on that will be through the floor. So you're into a very, very expensive world of advertising to make that product work, if you can at all. I'll probably go a little step further than Becca. I think if you are in a category where you're launching at this time of year and you're heavily dependent on peak trading, I would say you're 3 months too late to be asking the 15 reviews question. If peak season is critical to your category, let's say I think Becca, you talked about a few categories. If you're in any of those categories Becca mentioned or toys, you need to be seeing velocity building over summer. Now that's relative velocity to everybody else in the category, because come this time of year when volume starts to ramp up, if you're invisible because you haven't built your velocity and your competitors are visible, that will continue through peak at that same kind of ratio unless you do something to counter it. And if you're trying to outsell the competition when their sales are going through the roof across peak, that's a very expensive place to be in. So I've been looking at 3 to 6 months out, you should be retail ready, building momentum, driving success. And October onwards becomes really pouring some fuel on the fire and accelerating that, not getting the basics in place.
I think if you're in toys and games specifically, around soft toys, we know that goes quite big from a Christmas point of view, because everyone, you know, a parent, a grandparent are buying gifts for the young people in their lives. That's one. Excuse me. That is one big place that I would be looking at what's happening in the market around me. We have a brand who, when first transitioned from a vendor to seller account, launched their plastic toys on Amazon seller in October, and we had the #1 spot by January 1st. However, following January 1st, we dropped off a cliff, and the only reason we'd ridden that train was because of a movie release. It wasn't because we were ready, it's because we actually launched 3 months too late, and we rode off the success of the back of a movie launch, which then obviously the buzz, the excitement drops off post-Christmas. So for toys and games specifically, like coming into September, you should be ramping spend up. I know we've got a couple of clients that are kind of going, are we ready to go? Are we ready to go? Like we should be already starting to go with toys and games, because Christmas is already here in stores. It's coming forward. I always think as soon as you start to see the shiny tins of quality streets in supermarkets, that's when Christmas starts to trend on Amazon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the top search terms this week. So if you're selling toys and games or gifting product, you should already be ready to go. I know we're talking about Q4, but come September, you start to phase in.
Fantastic. Thank you, Becca. Anything to add from your side of things, Jake?
Yeah, I think you made the valid point from an ad side that it definitely does impact your ads performance. And one thing I see brands doing is when they're considering the ways to get reviews, the most popular way is fine, but it can come at quite an expense, particularly if the product cost is quite expensive. I think it's important to weigh that up versus the increased cost of ads. So if you've got a product with 0 reviews, you're trying to push it with ads, you will get some traffic, will be limited, but you have to spend an awful lot more to get each sale. So always weigh that up. The cost of buying is in the long run much more worth it to get that increased sales conversion for your ads, and you might get a much higher ROI on your ad spend and on your ad budget. And the only other thing I'd add is, if you are launching new products every year and you within the same category, there's another option to consider would also be seeing if you can launch as new products as a variation on existing products that can benefit from pre-existing reviews, rather than launching a brand new ASIN every year and try to start from scratch.
Jake, some great additions there. Thank you very much. Hannah, I'm conscious that you probably asked a lovely question there, and we might have just kind of thrown the cat amongst the pigeons. If you want a conversation with any of us afterwards and want to get into more detail, explaining exactly where you are and want some one-to-one advice, please just drop us a line. You'll get an automatic follow-up after this, but drop us a line, hello@ventureforge.co.uk, and we'll happily have a conversation, see if we can give you some specific advice there as well.
What I would say, just before we move on, is that both Jake and I have come at that from a very much a seller angle.
Yes.
Of the fact is, if you're a vendor client, for anyone who doesn't know, that's Amazon buying stock directly from you as a brand. If you're a vendor client, Amazon will be looking at the last 3 months, so from now backwards, to start placing POs for Q4. So if you're expecting big purchase orders coming through from Amazon, you should already be thinking about Q4, sort of July, August, September, to drive POs through.
Good context. Thank you, Becca. Okay, we're into the final 5 or 10 minutes. We'll jump on to Nicola's question next. Becca, this has got to be a very quick answer from your direction. When should you aim to have your Q4 stock in Amazon? You can't answer this with now. You've got to give a bit more detail.
Realistically, if this was me, I would be saying mid-September is the benchmark for getting stock in to be able to trade October, November, December. You want to be upfront in stock as much as you can as you go into September, and really bulking that out as much as you can. The fulfillment centres will shut they won't shut, but they do stop inbounding stock for a week before Prime Day 2, which is mid-October, and then they shut for the same time period around Black Friday as well. So for me, if you haven't started to get your stock at least inbounded by mid-September, I would say you're sitting slightly behind your competition there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Probably another one for you, Becca. I'll jump on to a second question from Hannah. Can you have an ASIN in 2 stores? I assume that means in 2 different storefronts.
You can. I probably need a little bit more detail around why you would want to do that. If it's, for example, a licensed product and you've got a licensed product in your own store and you want it as part of the as part of the licensed store, then yeah, absolutely you can. I think I would just want to understand a little bit more around the strategy around why you would do that. Just because if you've got 2 brands within a seller account and you've got 2 stores, I would just be trying to understand what other activities happening around there, because you'll be driving 2 lots of traffic to storefronts when you could just consolidate.
Fantastic. So technically, yes, but the question about strategically why, there might be a bit more depth behind that.
Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. Again, Hannah, drop us a line if you want some more information on that. We'll a bit more context. I'm sure we can be a bit more specific. Let's have a quick look, pull a few of the emailed in questions. I don't know who this has come from, but Ananda from our team has been loading some of these in the background. What key metrics should brands monitor to ensure their peak season strategies are effective? Jake, let's go from an ads perspective. What are you typically looking at for brands in terms of key KPIs?
I think this, if we're building a bespoke strategy for a brand around Q4, it's understanding what they're looking to achieve, as you've alluded to earlier. So some of the big things that brands want to do if they're looking to take market share during Q4, or if they're looking to improve their ad share of voice, we'll look at different metrics. So from an advertising perspective, we want to ensure really good ad coverage around peak season, ensuring that they've got as much ad coverage as possible. So we'll use some third-party tools which can track certain keywords and products, and we'll monitor their share of voice from an ads perspective relative to their niche and their competitors. That's always going to be effective. If we're going for click share and market share, these are metrics we can track through brand analytics to ensure that what impact the increased advertising activity is having on the click share for certain key search terms we're looking to rank for. And I think if we're inside the ads console, a really good metric to look at is top of search impression share. So as most people know, that top of search placement through advertising is the highest converting and highest grossing placement on Amazon. and there's a few levers you can pull to ensure you've got a higher or lower percentage of that, that top of search impression share is really important. And then, as well as trying to increase market share and being bold and increasing awareness, I think another thing to really keep an eye on is your brand impression share as well, which you can monitor inside the Ant console. So effectively a metric which tells you if customers are making branded searches, how often is your brand showing up in those advertising slots. And it's a really important one to monitor, being very much a bottom of funnel customer. It's high purchase intent. You can get the metrics now where if you're not showing up, you can see which customers are actually clicking on another brand and purchasing from them instead. So a really important one to monitor, that you're not losing those bottom of funnel high purchase intent customers.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. And from your side, Becca?
I think it goes back to the point that you made earlier, which is it depends on your strategy. If your strategy is over Q4 and peak trading is to take market share, then the KPIs I'd be looking at would be market share and understanding how my market share is comparing with my competition. If it's to clear stock, success is getting rid of stock and having less storage fees. So I think it all comes back to what it is that the goals are for Q4. Most people, I think, will be looking at to beat year on year. That was probably the one that we talk about most within the business. So having a stronger Q4 than last year, but really grinding into things like, have you launched a new product this year and that's actually taken 80% of your sales? That kind of detail can be important. But I do think, like I said, it comes back to where were your goals at the start of Q4 and how have you placed versus them as you come out of it?
Fantastic, thanks, Becca. I think the only final one I'd add to that is profit. I think that has got to be the ultimate KPI that you're tracking. That doesn't mean your strategy has to be about driving profit, because a market share growth strategy might be about operating at a loss to get that share and run the market next year. But if you can't, on a seller business, see your profit on a daily to weekly basis, particularly over peak trading, I think you've got an issue as a brand if you can't get to that level of granularity. Vendor is a bit more challenging to get to that level of detail in a quick and real-time basis, but at least understanding the impact on your net PPM with Amazon. Is that going to cause you any problems down the track? Is it where Amazon expects it to be? And from that, in as rapid a time as possible, understanding your own profitability. Typically on a vendor business, see that being done retrospectively, more monthly rather than weekly to daily, whereas you can a seller, but understanding what is happening at that profit KPI level, and then understanding the impact of that on your wider strategy. I think without further ado, guys, we're kind of a couple of minutes from the end, so I appreciate we've not got to everybody's questions. What we will do is we'll follow up with anybody who's asked a question after this we haven't got to on email. We'll send a quick follow-up out if anybody wants any follow-up detail. Feels a bit odd kind of saying this in August, but I think the final point for me, well, before we do the thank yous, is best of luck for peak trading. It really, really does start now. It's why we put this webinar in for today, whether that is the last minute planning to get your ducks in a row. You've still got a bit of August, some of September, but before you know it, it will be 1st of October. I think September seems to become conference season. We're all running around at events. Then it's nose down at your desk in October and getting the building blocks in place. Prime Day 2, Cyber Week, Christmas. Before you know it, we'll all be sat there full of turkey. So, very best of luck to everybody who's joined us this morning with all of your peak planning and all of your peak trading. If you do need any support along the way, these webinars are all about sharing information. This is not about a sales pitch from us, but if you do want any support, insight or help, drop us a line at hello@ventureforge.co.uk. And even if all you want is a quick conversation to bounce some ideas around, we'll happily give you some time and help where we can do. Before I wrap up and press the finish button, huge thank you to everybody who's given us an hour of their time to join us this morning. Hope that you found it useful and insightful. If you haven't, share the feedback. If you have, please do, and we'll share our webinar series to make these as good as we can for you. And a final thank you, Jake and Becca. Thank you very much for digging out your Christmas jumpers. Jake, thanks for putting some fresh batteries in the top for this morning to show us the fireplace. It's gone. Batteries have gone again. We need a batteries client.
Fresh batteries.
We need a batteries client. We'll get you some sense. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next webinar in about a month's time.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas all.
Bye.